right, I think we're good to go, right? So let's begin with our intro to Matillion, a cloud-based ETL tool webinar. We are going to talk about a little bit an overview of the tool, how it works, what we can do with that, and we will also do a small demo to show what we can do about it with a quick table load in Snowflake. All right. So to begin, let's first introduce myself. So my name is Alan Duarte. I am an ETL developer. For the last 10 years, I have been working with BI tools such as front and backend solutions. And especially with Matillion, I have been working with it for the last 3 years, and as well as Brent. Brent is co-hosting this webinar with me. He will be assisting me with the questions and answers everybody can ask at any time. Just use the Q&A section for that. And so I am associate at Data Mining. Me and Brent, we are both Matillion certified. We got the certification this year as soon as it was deployed on the market. So we took tests and we have been working on the last 2-3 years, right? So we have experience with the tool, and our idea is to present to you what we can do with the Matillion tool itself. All right. So about Data Mining is a business intelligence consulting company. So we provide our clients end-to-end BI solutions. So we have several kind of customers and clients and partners with, and Matillion is one of them. So we provide creative services, business intelligence, data management, data delivery, and education and training as well, with several kinds of tools focused on the BI side. All right. We have location in Florida, DC, New Jersey, Chicago, India, and Brazil itself. Okay. And moving on, the agenda for today is to have a little bit an overview of Matillion. So we are going to talk about concepts and terminology, about the workspace, and the two kinds of jobs we can have, which is the orchestration jobs and the transformation jobs. And also, after that, we are going to create a quick job to present a few functionalities of the tool. And the idea of this job is to load data from one table to another in Snowflake. And also we'll be able to perform an update strategy operation between those two tables, trying to replicate data from one table to another. And also we can also, apply a few data transformations to show what we can do. Okay. So before to do that, let's start a little bit with the quick comparison between the traditional ETL tools and the cloud ETL tools, where the traditional ETL tool is like, we have a slow speed to insight, we have a high cost of infrastructure, we have a software dependency, and then those new cloud ETL tools, we have like a capacity to plan minimum infrastructure costs and minimum installation configuration. For example, for the Matillion, we can access the tool from a browser. So we just need a browser to access, and we are able to fully develop and build our integration jobs. So it's very easy for us to do that. It's a very friendly interface. And also we can plan our use, we can plan our capacity. And so it's very, very dynamic for us. And so for Matillion specifically, we have the ability to connect to several different kinds of sources, and we can use the advantage of cloud providers such as Azure, AWS, Google, and we also have database supports to the fully integration with Matillion, like Snowflake, Databricks, Redshift, Synapse, and BigQuery. And with this, we are able to perform a fully integrated job that will allow us to read data from several different sources and bring them to a target destination on a database, and also provide us any kind of analysis as a BI reporting, data science, or any operation analytics. Okay. So on this case, for this webinar, we are going to focus on the Matillion ETL ELT for Snowflake. So we are also allowed, we have the opportunity to read from several sources, and we are going to load all of them to Snowflake. And after loading to Snowflake, we'll be able to build our analysis on this data there. So modern warehouses are adaptable, and we can assign compute for each line of business with this. All right. So to begin with that, this is the Matillion. workspace that we have. So this is the screen that we usually do. So we have the project configuration, we have the components here on this on the left side. Here is how we can configure each job, each component. And this is the monitor screen we can see to monitor our jobs, our tasks, our job executions, and so on. So this is the canvas that we have. And don't worry, because I'm going to show on a demo more details about this. And this is a demo job that we have. This is a very simple job that's going basically reading data from a table, performing some data cleansing, data treatments, and applying a join to another table, and then loading this final data to another table. All of this here is Snowflake. So our source is Snowflake. Our target is Snowflake as well. And all this data cleansing process is between those jobs. So this is a sample job that we have right now, and I'm going to show to you a simple job similar to this one that will be allows us to load the one data from one table to another and also perform quick calculations between them. All right. So this is the agenda for our live demo. We are going to know a little bit more about the Matillion workspace. We are going to create a transformation job. We are going to load the data from one table to another and propagate changes between them, and also apply a few data transformations. So to begin with that, let me change my screen. And so this is the job we are planning to build, okay? So the first thing to do is I have a Snowflake environment ready for me, and I'm going to create two tables to represent what I'm trying to do. So the first table I'm going to create is called people. And the second table I'm going to create is a table called people target, where the main idea is to load these records from the people table to the people target table. It's a simple move records from one table to another and propagate those changes. Okay, so I'm going to create the people table now with this SQL statement. I'm also going to create the people target table with this SQL statement as well. And I'm going to insert these 6 rows on the people table. So running this, we will be able to see that the people table will have 6 rows now, and the people target would have 0 because we haven't inserted any record to that. So if we apply a simple select on the people, we can see that the 6 rows are here, right? And the people target, it's completely empty. So the main idea, the main goal is to load all data from this table to this one here. All right. So to do that, let's begin with the Matillion workspace. So as I was telling you, this is our project configuration. Here is the component side. Here's how we can configure each tool on each job. And here is how we can monitor our jobs. So remember when I was speaking about a transformation job and an orchestration job, it's more like when you have an orchestration, we have the ability to connect any outside source, any outside system to Snowflake itself. Since we are using a Matillion ETL for Snowflake, every kind of outside source will allow us to drop this, to load this data to the Snowflake table. So we have several kinds of connectors, several kinds of applications, APIs we can connect, and all of these would load this data to a Snowflake table. This is when it comes to orchestration. We are talking about getting data from outside and load them to Snowflake. This is orchestration itself. And of course, we can build if and start and fail. We have this opportunity to build a fully implemented job. But when we are talking about transformation job, we are talking about Snowflake itself. So when it comes to transformation, we are talking about reading data from Snowflake and loading data to Snowflake as well, and doing any kind of transformations and calculations we need with the data within Snowflake. So for example, let me build a job here. Do you see that we have an option to build an orchestration and a transformation? So when we build an orchestration job, let me call here. When we build this, we have the ability to see the all available components we have. So we have agile integration, we have several kind of connectors. We can see here that the list is like, it's huge, right? So we have a lot of connectors available for us. And as I said, since we are talking about orchestration, each one of these that we bring, for example, an API extract, just by bringing this, will be allows us to configure the API, and we also always have to load a Snowflake table for that. So every time we use an orchestration component, we are going to load this data, land this data to a Snowflake table, all right? So we have several kind of connectors today, several kind of systems, APIs available for us to build. But the intent of this webinar is to focus more on the transformation job, transforming data from one table to another. So we are not going to use an orchestration job for that. We are going to use a transformation job for that. All right, so we have several kind of connectors. We have the ability on the orchestration to use any kind of DDL scripts for SQL. We also have the flow options to have an end success and failure if or, and any kind of job control itself, okay? So I just forgot to say, if anyone has any questions, just use the Q&A section, and please let me know, okay? So for this scope, I'm not going to focus more on the orchestration. I'm going to focus more on the transformation job. So I'm going to create a transformation job here. I'm going to call it transformation, load people data. And you can see that when we move to a transformation job, the components available are a little bit different. So when it comes to an orchestration, we have several kind of source systems to bring data. And when it comes to a transformation job, the component is different. So we can read data, we can join, we can transform, we can write to another table, and we can apply a few tests. But that's what we do, because when it comes to a transformation, we are like on the Snowflake side, since we are using Matillion ETL for Snowflake. So when it comes to, we can read a Snowflake table, a stream, a multi-table, we have a sequence or a fixed flow itself. So on this case, since I'm trying to represent a load from one Snowflake table to another, I'm going to use a transformation for that, because I'm on the Snowflake side. I just want to transform data. I just want to load data, okay? So basically, let me see, I think we have a question. So let me show to you. Basically, what I'm going to do right now is load data from this table to another, right? So what I'm going to do is, here on the transformation, you see we have a read input, right? So I'm going to use a table input for that. So I'm just going to drag the component here, and this will allow me to configure the Snowflake configuration, such as database, schema, and the table name itself. So I'm going to use Matillion DB, which is our configuration, schema public, and the table itself is called people, right? So I'm going to use the people table, and I'm going to select the table names here. I'm going to use all of them, since are the 3 columns I'm using right now, right? The ID, the name, and the salary for each one of the employees, as this example, okay? So I'm going to drag these 3 columns here. And basically that's how I configure how I'm going to read this table. But I want to load this data to another one. So I'm going to use the write folder, and the write folder as a table output. And this will allow me to bring this data from this other one here. So since I'm talking about an load operation, we need to select a warehouse. I'm going to select a Matillion warehouse for that. The database and the schema is the same for Matillion DB, and also public. This is on our Snowflake environment, right? This can differ, of course. And the target table where I'm going to load is this people target, right? So this is the table I'm going to load, people target. So I have the option to fix any kind of data type mismatches, but what I need to do right now is to map the column. So I'm going to say this column from the source table is going to be loaded to this column on the target table, and so on. So the tables have the same structure. So I'm going to just map them here. I clicked on the add all, and ID is mapped to ID, name is mapped to name, and salary is mapped to salary. All right. So that's the simple configuration we have to do. So I'm just selecting here from one table to another. The columns are mapped. I have the option to order by if I want, and I also have the option to append the records or truncate the records. Let's say if we select append, every time you run the job, the data is going to be appended on the bottom every time. So if you select a truncate, instead of appending, the table will be cleaned every time you run. So these are two kind of different scopes that we need to decide. On this case, for me, I'm just going to use truncate, for example, but it depends on your need, right? So basically, after configuring this, coming back to our Snowflake side, we can see that the people has data, people target is empty. So we can simply run our job and test to see if the job ran successfully and if we can see the data being inserted. So after we run a job, you can see that we have a green sign here. So we can see how the job went. So we can see how our job worked, and we can see that six roles were affected. So it seems to me that it was a successful execution and our table was loaded correctly. So when it comes to the people target now, here we have the data from the source table, right? So everything worked as expected, okay? So remember when I was speaking about the append. So if I select append here, and if I run the job again, and if I keep running the job several times, the data is going to be appended. So instead of having 6 rows, we are going to have 12 rows. And if I run again, we are going to have 18 rows. So it depends on your need. If you want to append, or if you want to truncate, if it's a staging table, if it's a more ETW table. So we have this option to select these two load options. All right. So, but this case here, I am just inserting data. I'm just truncating reload the data. And what I want to do is I want to do a fully upsert operation. So what I want to configure a job that is going to insert data if the data is new and update data if the data is different. So that's existing and different. So that's the job I want to do. So instead of using a table output component that I just used, we are just loading data here. I want to use the table update component, which is going to perform an upsert operation on the table, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this component, and I'm going to drag the table update component here. The table update is very similar to the table output, but with this, we have the opportunity to apply any kind of upsert logics here, as I'm going to show to you. So let's select the warehouse again. Let's select the database, select the schema. We are going to point to our people target table, right? And now it comes the decision point. We need to select an alias and an alias for the target and an alias for the source. I'm just going to keep as it is, target and input. And now we need to define a join logic. The join logic is a logic that will allow us to see if this data is existing or not. So we need a key for that, which this key, I name it ID. So I'm going to use the ID key, ID column as a key, I'm sorry, to check if this row is existing or not, if a new row or not. So let's say we have these rows here. So I can say that the ID is our key. So we can do a match. Every time I see a record with an ID 1, if we have a match, this is an existing record. So we want to apply an update if the column is different, for example, the salary column. If we try to do a join and we do not find any ID, we can see that this is a new row, right? So that's the main idea of the join on this case, to check if it is an existing or a new row. So on this case, I'm going to join people ID to the people target ID to check if they are new or not. So I'm going to come to the join expression, and I'm going to select input ID equals to target ID. This is how the join will be configured, by the ID of both tables, right? So I'm just gonna hit OK. Let me copy this. And here we have an option of when matched. So when, we can simply say when ID equals to ID, we are going to perform an update operation. We could also apply a delete, but on this case, I'm going to use an update strategy. So we can say that every time we have an ID matching to an ID, we are going to update those records no matter what, right? So basically, I just configured the join as an ID. I'm just saying that if the ID matches, I'm going to update them. So if we go to the update mapping, it's very similar to what I did before. I'm just going to show which columns from the source should be mapped to the target. All right. So it's all of them, ID, name, and salary. Actually, the ID doesn't need, because the ID is a join logic, right? So we don't need to update it. We just need to update the other two columns, name and salary, right? So the update mapping is configured, and you see that we have an option here called include not matched. And actually is defined to no, but I wanted to define an is yes, because this is basically saying to us, if we try to do a join and we do not have a match, so it means we have an ID on the source that was not matched to the target. So it means it's a new ID, right? So if we have this case, I want to insert those records. Since we do not have a join, I want to insert those new records on the table. So that's why we have the include not match option. And I need to configure the insert mapping as well, which is the same thing, right? So remember, the update mapping, we do not pass the ID because the ID is the key to update. So we don't need to update it. But on the insert mapping, I had to pass the ID because the ID is a new row to be inserted. So we need to provide all the columns to be inserted, okay? So running the job right now, on theory, should not happen anything because the data is completely the same. So if we select here people and we select people target, the data is the same, right? Let me just recreate the table because I ran twice, remember, on the append solution. So it was not truncated. So let me run again. So we have 6 on the source and we have now 6 on the target, right? So what I want to demonstrate is, we have a SQL statement here that we are going to update a row on the people source table, that we are going to set the salary for 12,000 or where the ID equals to 1. So we are going to say that John, that has a salary of 8,000 today, we are going to set to 12,000 right now on this updated logic, okay? So basically, after doing this, one row was updated. So when it comes to the people now, John's salary is 12,000. But then on the people target, it is still 8,000. So this is the change we need to track. This is what we need to provide an update to that, okay? So simply running the job here, we are going to basically match the ID to the table, and we will be able to see that the salary itself will be updated. So simply running this, no data should be inserted and only John's roles should be updated. All right, so this row was updated, okay? But there is something that we still need to confirm. Let's hit here on the job that ran successfully. And we can see that 6 rows were affected. So what actually happened here? Here happened what we configured to do. Remember when I came here and said on the update, when matched, I just said ID equal to ID. So John's salary was updated, but all the others were updated as well, even though they were not changed. So we performed 5 update operations here on those 5 rows that didn't need to happen. They were not updated at all. but they were updated on the SQL statement. So what I want to confirm is I just want to update the records that were changed, right? So instead of coming here to the update, include not the when matched option, I'm going to use input salary is different from the target salary. So with this condition, I'm going to make sure that I'm going to only use processing power to update a row on the target table only if the ID matches and only if the salary is different. Because if the salary is the same and the ID is the same and the name is the same, I don't need to do any kind of update. I'm not going to lose any time, any processing time to do that, since we don't have any difference. So with this condition here, I'm making sure that I'm only going to update when the salary is different after joining by the ID. So let's hit the OK now. And for this scenario, let's come back to John's and let's roll back his salary to 8,000. So I'm going to update the source again. So John's salary is going to come back to 8,000. All right. So now John is 8,000 on the source, and in the target is 12,000 again. Okay. So running the job now, on theory, it should come back to 8,000 on the target, right? So 12 here, running. Now John came back to 8,000. But the real thing is, let's come back and check how many rows were affected. And we can see that only one row was affected. So here we can confirm that only John's row was updated. The others were ignored. Why they were ignored? Because we didn't have any change on the attributes. The ID was joined, but the salary didn't change. So why we're going to update it? So they were basically ignored. We only moved on John's. That was the only row that has a difference between those tables. So this is an interesting point that we have, because of course we're talking about 6 rows here, right? But when we are talking about 12 million rows, 20 million rows, this is a huge difference of processing power, right? So coming back to our job, don't forget, if you have any questions, just let me know on the QA and Q&A section, okay? Coming back to our tables here, let's say I want to apply a quick transformation, a quick table transformation. Let's apply a quick uppercase on the name, for example. So remember on the component side that we have several kinds of transforms available. So we have aggregate, we have calculate, we have distinct, we have filter, we have several kinds of transformation, SQL statement transformations available for us here, right? So on this case, I want to do a simple uppercase. So an uppercase will allow me to do with the calculator. The calculator is a component, it's a very generic component that allows us to do a lot of SQL statement transformations. So let me delete this row. I'm going to connect the source to the calculator now. And then I'm going to connect the calculator itself to our target table, right? So when you open the calculator, here we have the options to create any kind of expressions we want, and here we have all the available functions for us. These functions, they are all Snowflake related, since we are on the Snowflake environment, so they're all related to Snowflake. So we have a lot of string functions, and we can keep here going on all the functions we have on our availability, okay? And what I want to do is I want to uppercase this data. Remember that data we inserted here is like capitalized. I want to, for this example, uppercase everybody, okay? So I'm going to search for an uppercase here. So we have a function called upper. So it's a simple syntax, just type upper and the field itself, and every row, every character will be uppercased, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new expression. I'm going to name it as name upper, which is I'm going to use the upper function, and I'm going to drag the name from the source. I just click twice and it comes here as the name, as the field with double quotes. So basically, I'm creating a new field called name upper, and the expression within this field is the upper and the name itself. So basically, I'm just uppercasing this field and dragging to another column called name upper. So if we hit OK here, when it comes to the people target now, if I run this job, nothing's going to happen because I didn't map this new column to the target table. So if I really want to drag this row, this new column, this new uppercase column to the target, I need to map this column there. So remember that we have an update mapping and insert mapping options here. So when it comes here, I'm going to use this new column we just created called name upper, right? So I'm going to use name upper to the update mapping. And on the insert mapping as well, I'm going to use name upper too. So on this, with doing this, I am confirming that I'm using the uppercase field to all rows coming to this job, right? So to make sure that we are going to provide an update to all of them, let's just remove the update mapping here. So I'm going to roll back to the ID. Remember when I was doing the salary different here, I'm going to roll back to the ID one because I want everybody to be updated on this case, okay? So running the job now should allows us to have data on the source on the way it is, and on the target, it should be uppercased as we can see right now. So this is just a simple demonstration on how we can apply any kind of calculations, any kind of transformations between any kind of fields and between fields too. And on this case, we just used the uppercase option to load the data, right? And we didn't use to do any kind of transformation within the field, but we just loaded the table here. And all of them were updated according to our ID join logic, right? So this is the main idea of this demo, okay? Coming back to we are remembering that we are all on the transformation side, so we are on the Snowflake world here. So we are reading from a Snowflake table and we are loading to a Snowflake table, applying any kind of treatments that we want on the middle, all right? So yeah, so that's the idea of this demo. If you have any questions, just let me know, please, on the Q&A section. And basically that's the main idea of the demo, okay? So of course we have this job. So let's say I want to run this job every day. I want to run this job like after an execution point, after doing something. So then that's the time when we can come back to the orchestration level, which is a more high level. And we can come back to the orchestration here, I'm sorry. And this is where we have a start option here. We can drag our transformation job I just built. We can drag it here. So running this orchestration is going to call my transformation job I just built. So then they can be nested on the orchestration job. So of course, this is just a simple job, but we can select any kind of treatment. For example, I'm going to start and I'm going to run this job, loading data and uppercasing data I just did. So I'm going to run this job. And here we have three options. If we have a green sign, we can move on. So if we have a successful execution, we can move on. If we have a failure execution, we can do other things as well. For example, send an email. So we can use the send email functionality here. So if the job fails, I'm going to use the red row and send an email saying the job failed for this reason. We can get the error message and say the error here. Or if it was succeeded, then I can use the green sign here and we can call another component. Let's say, for example, we want to do another email saying the job was successful. So I can use the green run here and communicate that the job was successful. So the orchestration will allow us to build a real flow of sequence of events. And we also have the main role here, which is an unconditional. So the unconditional is no matter what happened to this component, if it failed or not, no matter what happened, we are going to proceed even way. So we can, for example, have a DDL statement here, or any SQL statement, any kind of component here that is as an unconditional way, no matter what happened, we are going to proceed with that and apply, for example, a table recreation, a table being dropped, a table being created. We can do any kind of SQL statement here, okay? So this is on the orchestration level. So remember, we are allowing us to load any data outside to Snowflake on the orchestration side, as well as building a real job flow. And we also can call any transformation jobs here. And we also can call other orchestrations as well. So if I build another orchestration here, I'm just going to call as test 2, okay? I can also bring this orchestration here as well. So you can see that I am on an orchestration job. I can call a transformation job. I can call other components, and I can call another orchestration as well. So this is how we can build like a huge flow of dependencies. Like we can have a master orchestration job calling other orchestrations, calling other jobs, other jobs, and with a full chain of execution. If it fails, we can send an email. If it fails, we can drop the table. We can recreate the table. We can clean staging tables. We can do any kind of treatments we want, okay? So yeah, as I was saying, that's the main idea of this demo, this webinar. I just wanted to highlight a little bit more of Matillion processing, what we can do with that, how easy it is for us, how friendly the interface is for us to build, right? And just with a browser, we are allowed to do that, right? And of course, focusing on this one, on the transformation side, loading data to another and applying some quick calculations between that, okay? So again, if you have any questions, just let me know. Just use the Q&A section for that. And let's just move on, okay? And so, yeah, that's the main idea for that. I hope I was very clear on this. I hope it was straightforward. If you could understand successfully what I was meaning to do. And yeah, let me see if I have any questions here.
All right, Alan, thank you. Thank you for sharing. We do have a couple questions here. So just wanted to go ahead and confirm, if you could, what cloud providers you can load or use Matillion with.
The cloud providers, we have the three main today, which is Azure, we have AWS, and Google Cloud Platform. These are the three clouds providers that we have today.
And then as kind of a follow-up question to that, are you restricted to just the databases on those cloud providers, or what other databases are you able to use with Matillion?
Yeah, coming back to let me come back here. Do you see that we have the opportunity to reach out to several kind of databases? But here we have the three cloud providers that we have. So is Azure, AWS, and Google, right? And when you select a Matillion instance, you need to select one of those 5 databases here to be fully integrated with. On this case, we used Snowflake, right? So it was Matillion ETL for Snowflake. That was the solution. But we also have Databricks, Redshift, Synapse, and Google BigQuery. But this is talking about the Matillion fully integration. When it comes to the database, we can read from any kind of database. We have several for our, we can read, for example, for SQL Server, for Postgres, for MySQL. We can read from a lot of database here within this option here.
All right, and then there's another question related to that as well, which is those extra databases that you're connecting to. Do you have to pay for each of those connectors as add-ons to the tool?
I believe not. It's like it's available for us here, right? So let me come back here. For example, when we are talking about database or integration, we are talking about an orchestration job, right? So we don't have to pay anything on here. For example, they are like the connectors are available here already. For example, we can do any kind of database query here and we'll be able to good to go.
All right. Excellent.
All right.
There's two questions that kind of go hand in hand here, and I'm gonna kind of summarize both of them. And the question is, does Matillion kind of store the data, or how does Matillion handle the data? And sort of a subsequent question to that is, does Matillion use its own processing to do that, or does it use the processing of the cloud platform that it sits on?
Yeah, basically on the transformation side, the processing would be more focused on the Snowflake side, because if you think about it here, the job, I'm just pointing to Snowflake calculations. For example, if you come here to the calculator and if you come here, for example, I want to see a little bit more, let me come to the upper function, right? So yeah, I want to do an uppercase function here on the calculator, and I want to see a full documentation. If I click here, it is going to redirect me to a Snowflake site, right? So you can see that we are taking advantage of Snowflake processing here, and also Snowflake functions. So you can see that we are inside Matillion, but we are using Snowflake functions here. So on the transformation one, we are using basically Snowflake processing. But when it comes here to the orchestration side, we can use several kind of processing. For example, let me get an connector here to show you as an example. Do you see that we are bringing data from an API? For example, of course, we have to configure the API authentication, the API profile. We have to configure a lot of things here. We also have to configure a Snowflake table to the data to be landed. But here we have the option to have a staging. So we can select staging to be, we can select an S3 location, we can select an Azure Blob location, a Google Cloud location, or we can select Snowflake Manage. So this stage platform would allow us to select which staging is going to handle the processing. So if I select Snowflake Manage, Snowflake itself will handle it, but I can also select other kinds, S3, Blob, or Google Cloud Storage location as well. Was it clear?
Yes. All right. Thank you, Alan. We have another question in here, which is, are you able to use Python to perform any data transformations?
Yeah, we can. We have a specific Python component here as on the scripting side. So if you go to scripting, you can see that we have the availability to use Bash and also Python. So we can use a Bash script here. And of course, we can use Python as well. So we have the ability to run several kind of Python integrations here. So of course, we can also build a job variable. We can use this variable to load the data here. We can use this variable to be updated here on the Python script as the environment variable. So we have the option to build a lot of integrations between values, between jobs, between flows, and the Python script itself.
All right. Thank you for that, Alan. That does wrap up all of the questions that we do have in the Q&A. If anybody does have any final questions, please feel free to type them in. Otherwise, I think that's all we have on the Q&A side at this time, Alan.
Sure. Thank you.
All right, well,
So
it
yeah.
looks like we can wrap up a few minutes early here. So I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who attended, and we'll hand this over to Alan for closing statements here.
Yeah, I just want to thank you everybody for the audience. Thank you everybody that came here today, took some time to know a little bit more about the Matillion workspace, the Matillion overview. I hope I was very clear to that. Like, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask, feel free to contact us, and you can book a free discovery call to see how we can take advantage of Matillion to leverage your organization. So thank you again for your audience. Thank you for the attendance, and just let me know if you can assist you and help you with anything.